Now, despite the fact that Bremer didn't act alone in the murder, she didn't even pull the trigger, prosecutors said her role was even worse because Hoffman considered Bremer her best friend.
Society sees women as nurturers, not killers. But not these women. From heartbreaking family tragedies to courtroom chaos, these brutal female killers shattered every expectation. Darlie Routier's shocking case of a mother accused of an unthinkable crime will leave you questioning everything. Let's dive in.
She was 19 years old and developmentally disabled. Investigators say she was killed because of an online scheme. A man they had never met promised millions of dollars to murder someone.
He was very matter-of-fact about the whole thing, almost glib. When he told me about shooting Cynthia in the head and kicking her body into the water, he laughed. And I will never in my life forget that.
In Alaska's remote wilderness, a sinister betrayal unfolded. Cynthia Hoffman, a kind-hearted 19-year-old, believed that she was on a simple hiking trip with friends. Instead, she walked into a calculated trap, one that would end her life in a chilling and senseless murder.
It all began with a bizarre online catfishing scheme.
Darren Schillmiller posed as a millionaire online, offering $9 million to, quote, rape and murder someone in Alaska.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to do it.
Cynthia Hoffman was blissfully unaware. The 18-year-old she considered her best friend had targeted her in a murder plot. Her uncle Don Hoffman says that was characteristic of her trusting nature and naivete.
Denali Bremer, then 18, was lured into a dark web of manipulation by an online predator. The man, posing as a wealthy millionaire named Tyler, promised her $9 million in exchange for video evidence of a murder. Blinded by greed and eager to please her catfish, Denali began plotting a crime so heinous it shocked even seasoned investigators. To carry out the plan, she recruited 2 accomplices, including 16-year-old Caden McIntosh, and chose Cynthia Hoffman, her best friend, as the target. Cynthia, who had developmental disabilities, trusted Denali completely. That trust was heartlessly exploited. On June 2, 2019, Denali lured Cynthia on a hike near the Eklutna River under the influence of a fun outing. But for Denali and her accomplices, it was the perfect setting for murder.
The plot to murder Hoffman began when Denali Bremer began an online relationship with a man calling himself Tyler and claimed to be a millionaire. But Tyler was really 21-year-old Darren Schillmiller. He told Bremer if she murdered someone and sent him photos and videos of it, then he would give her $9 million. The teens lured Hoffman to Thunderbird Falls trailhead for a hike. McIntosh shot her in the head and put her body in the river. One day after she went missing, her body was found bound with duct tape.
The betrayal came swiftly. Once on the trail, Cynthia was ambushed. The group duct taped her hands and feet, rendering her defenseless. As she begged for her life, Caden McIntosh shot her in the back of the head with a handgun provided by Denali. Denali documented the entire crime, capturing photos and videos that she sent to Tyler as proof. The group then discarded Cynthia's body in a river, leaving her to be discovered by authorities days later. What makes this crime even more shocking? Tyler wasn't real. He was Darren Schillmiller, a 21-year-old from Indiana who had catfished Denali, preying on her vulnerability to orchestrate the crime from afar. The investigation moved quickly. Cynthia's family reported her missing, and police soon uncovered the group's twisted plan through text messages, social media exchanges, and incriminating footage. Denali's cold confession during questioning left detectives stunned.
I know what I did was wrong, and I know I could have probably done something different if I was able to.
Late this afternoon, a 23-year-old woman has received a 99-year prison sentence for her role in the 2019 murder of Cynthia Hoffman near Thunderbird Falls. Lauren Maxwell, just out of the courtroom.
Denali Bremer was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and tampering with evidence. In court, she admitted to the crimes and expressed regret, but the damage was irreparable. She was sentenced to 99 years in prison without parole, ensuring she spent the rest of her life behind bars.
The only thing I know is that my daughter trusted these people. My daughter just wanted friends. Now I have to bury her.
She was a very smart, bright, vibrant young lady. She loved life. She loved music. She liked shopping, just regular kid stuff.
The courtroom was heavy with grief as Cynthia's family confronted Denali. Her father described Cynthia as an innocent, trusting soul whose kindness was cruelly taken advantage of. He called the crime unforgivable and a tragic reminder of the dangers of online manipulation.
The hurt I caused you and your family, I can never rectify in any way. I understand it hurts. You lost a precious child, and the community lost a daughter as well.
Denali, for her part, broke down during sentencing, but her tears did little to comfort those she had devastated. Her calculated actions and the gruesome details of Cynthia's murder left the courtroom speechless. Denali's case wasn't just a story of manipulation. It was a cautionary tale of how easily trust can be weaponized. Cynthia Hoffman's life was stolen in an act of pure betrayal, and the devastating loss is a wound that her loved ones will carry forever. Denali may spend the rest of her life behind bars, but for Cynthia's family, justice will never bring true closure. Denali's story of betrayal shows how dark intentions can hide in plain sight, but Bonnie Duarte's reckless actions left a trail of destruction that words can hardly capture, and her courtroom behavior shocked everyone in attendance.
Brooke Hawley, Dylan Mack, and AJ Rossi were in California for spring break when Duarte caused this horrific crash.
On a clear March night in Huntington Beach, California, the lively atmosphere was suddenly shattered by a horrific scene. A fiery crash had claimed the lives of 3 vibrant teenagers and left the community reeling. At the center of the tragedy stood Bonnie Duarte, whose reckless decisions led to irreversible heartbreak.
It was supposed to be a spring break trip for 3 best friends to get away for a few days, but tragedy struck.
He was just 18 and taken from us too soon.
On March 29, 2018, 28-year-old Bonnie Duarte got behind the wheel while intoxicated, despite repeated warnings from her friends to stay off the road. Speeding through Huntington Beach, Duarte lost control of her car and slammed into a Hyundai parked on Pacific Coast Highway. The Hyundai was occupied by 4 teenagers who had been enjoying their spring break. The collision was catastrophic. The impact ignited the Hyundai, engulfing it in flames. 3 passengers, Albert Rossi, Brooke Hawley, and Dylan Mack, all 17 years old, were trapped inside and perished in the fire. The sole survivor, Alexis Vargas, managed to escape with injuries but was left traumatized by the horrifying scene.
And according to the LA Times, information collected from Duarte's car computer system shows that she was going 79 miles per hour at the time of the crash, and she didn't touch the brake in the 5 seconds before the crash.
They were set to graduate high school in June, celebrating with a spring break trip in Huntington Beach, California, just hours away from reuniting with their families in Las Vegas. But they never made it home.
As authorities arrived, Duarte showed no signs of remorse. Witnesses report that she appeared disoriented, smelling of alcohol, and unable to explain why she was behind the wheel. Tests later revealed her blood alcohol level was nearly 3 times the legal limit. During the trial, it became clear that Duarte's actions were not an isolated mistake. Prosecutors presented evidence showing that Duarte had 2 prior DUI convictions, making her fully aware of the potential consequences of driving under the influence. The emotional testimonies of the victims' families left the courtroom heavy with grief.
Woman who took the lives of 3 Las Vegas teens learned her fate in a California court today. Bonnie Duarte was driving drunk when she caused that deadly crash that killed the Centennial High School students.
The jury found Duarte guilty of 3 counts of second-degree murder, DUI causing injury, and hit and run. In February 2020, she was sentenced to 51 years to life in prison. The judge called her actions a reckless disregard for human life. While the sentencing brought some closure to the families, it couldn't undo the devastation Duarte had caused.
I grieve for 2 people. The person I was before this, and my son.
As they stood up to speak to the woman who took their children's lives, Bonnie Duarte was sentenced to 51 years to life in prison Thursday after she killed these 3 Las Vegas teens while driving drunk in March of 2018.
I do want to apologize for my selfish decisions that had taken people's loved ones.
There isn't anything that will ever fill this empty hole in my soul.
At this point, I don't even know who's going to raise my children, or if I'm ever going to be able to ever hug them again or comfort them. No one is to blame but me. I take responsibility.
The courtroom was a mix of heartbreak and anger. Family members of the victims delivered emotional impact statements, describing the incredible loss of 3 young lives full of potential. Duarte sobbed during the sentencing, repeatedly apologizing for her actions, but her tears offered little solace to the grieving families. In stark contrast, Alexis Vargas, the sole survivor, shared his struggle to cope with the tragedy and the weight of losing his friends. His words were a haunting reminder of the lasting scars this crime left behind. Bonnie Duarte's reckless actions shattered lives, but Aloma Curry Walker's chilling betrayal takes things even further. Her deadly plan against someone she vowed to love will leave you stunned.
The coward who did this will be caught. I am not afraid of anything, don't get it twisted. But what happened here is outrageous, past outrageous. My prayers, my heart, my soul go out to his wife and his children. For them to lose such a loving person that I'm hearing of.
In the quiet hours of Cleveland, Ohio, a firefighter's life of service and love was cut short in a betrayal that shocked the community. William Walker, a beloved veteran firefighter, was gunned down just steps away from the home he shared with his new wife, Aloma Curry Walker. What initially seemed like a robbery gone wrong turned out to be something far darker. A calculated act of greed orchestrated by the person he trusted most.
10 years ago this month, Cleveland firefighter Lieutenant William Walker was killed, shot in the driveway of his home in what authorities would learn was a murder-for-hire plot concocted by his wife.
At first, William Walker's murder left investigators puzzled. The 45-year-old firefighter had no known enemies, and his dedication to his family and community made the crime seem senseless. But beneath the surface, Aloma Curry Walker had been living a lie. Drowning in debt and desperate to find a way out, she devised a chilling plan. Just 4 months after marrying William, she plotted his murder to claim his $100,000 life insurance policy, viewing his life as a way to erase her financial troubles. Aloma approached her 17-year-old daughter and her daughter's boyfriend, Chad Paget, to help recruit the hitman. Chad in turn enlisted Chris Hine, a young acquaintance. For Aloma, this wasn't just about money. It was about manipulation, using everyone around her to achieve her sinister goal.
November 3rd, 2013, Walker was shot multiple times in his driveway. He didn't make it.
I actually worked at Metro Hospital in the ER, and Will was my patient. So I knew he was coming in when I heard that he was shot.
On November 3rd, 2013, Aloma's plan came to fruition. William had returned home after a long day of work when Chris Hine ambushed him outside his garage and shot him multiple times. The neighborhood was rocked by the sound of gunfire, and police quickly arrived on the scene. Aloma's act began to unravel almost immediately. She played the grieving widow, but quickly raised suspicion with her calm demeanor and inconsistent stories. Investigators discovered that William's life insurance policy still listed his ex-wife as the beneficiary, meaning Aloma stood to gain nothing from the murder. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered damning evidence. Chad Paget confessed to his role, exposing the web of manipulation Aloma had spun. Text messages and testimonies revealed her attempts to orchestrate the crime and silence those involved.
Monday, Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Tim McGinty announced that a total of 5 people were involved in killing him in what he calls a murder for hire, orchestrated by his wife, Aloma Walker Curry. Investigators say Aloma was committing financial fraud in his name. They say she was afraid he might find out what she was doing and assumed she could use his life insurance to pay debts.
98191, co-defendant D, Aloma Curry. Co-defendant is pending on the docket.
Do you have an attorney? Do you have any money or funds to hire an attorney?
In 2017, Aloma Curry Walker was brought to trial. The courtroom was gripped with tension as the prosecution laid out the horrifying details of the case. Testimonies from her daughter and Chad Paget painted a chilling picture of her willingness to exploit even her own family. After just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered their verdict: guilty of aggravated murder, conspiracy, and other charges. The judge didn't hold back during sentencing, condemning Aloma for her cold, calculated actions. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
And so we are just shocked and distraught. My father did not deserve this at all. He was such a great man, a great role model.
He was a great, great man, a great father, a great firefighter, a great partner. We worked together on the same fire trucks a lot.
Brian Webb remembers him as the guy who could cheer you up and make you laugh after a tough call.
I'm just really, really hurt to know that my mother was able to do something like this. It's just so upsetting. It's so sad.
In the courtroom, William's family broke down as the verdict was read, struggling to comprehend how someone he loved could betray him so completely. His colleagues from the fire department described him as a selfless hero, a man who dedicated his life to saving others, only to have his own life stolen in such a brutal way. Aloma, however, showed no remorse. Her blank expression as the sentencing was announced sent chills through the courtroom, a stark contrast to the tears and heartbreak of William's loved ones. Aloma Curry Walker's calculated betrayal left devastation in its wake. But the next case takes us into a world of hidden anger. Without warning, Amy Bishop, a Harvard professor, unleashed a murderous storm of rage and revenge on her colleagues.
The shocking crime and the suspect's checkered past. In the 4 days since police say Professor Amy Bishop opened fire inside a faculty meeting, killing 3 Alabama colleagues.
On February 12, 2010, a routine faculty meeting at the University of Alabama in Huntsville turned into a horrifying tragedy. Amy Bishop, a Harvard-educated professor in biology, walked into the meeting with a loaded handgun. Within moments, gunfire erupted, leaving 3 faculty members dead and 3 others injured. What started as a disagreement about tenure became one of the most shocking crimes to ever rock the academic world.
A Harvard-educated neurobiology professor, a mother of 4. They say Amy Bishop had the ultimate grudge to bear against her fellow professors and began shooting them one by one.
Amy Bishop was brilliant but troubled. Behind the achievements, she had a history of disturbing behavior and unresolved anger. Bishop had recently been denied tenure, a professional death sentence in academia. Her colleagues described her as difficult, erratic, and increasingly volatile in the weeks leading up to the shooting.
As police rushed to the scene of the latest campus shooting spree, an all too disturbing tragedy played out at the University of Alabama on Friday.
That February afternoon, she calmly entered the conference room. As her colleagues settled in, Bishop pulled out a 9mm handgun and began shooting, targeting her peers with cold precision. Professors Gopi Padilla, Maria Ragland Davis, and Adriel Johnson were killed instantly. 2 others were critically injured, and 1 barely escaped with their life.
Fighting for her life, Moriarty managed to crawl into the hallway, but says Bishop followed her, ready to shoot. And just when she thought her life would come to an end,
amid the chaos, Bishop's gun jammed. Quick-thinking staff tackled her, pinning her down until police arrived. As she was handcuffed and led away, her demeanor was unsettlingly calm, a chilling prelude to what would unfold in court.
It didn't happen. There's no way.
What about the people who died?
There's no way they're still alive.
Investigators discovered this wasn't Bishop's first brush with violence. Decades earlier, she had fatally shot her younger brother in what was ruled an accident, a decision that would later face intense scrutiny. Old police reports revealed inconsistencies in her story, raising questions about whether that shooting was truly accidental.
Sit down and talk to her and ask her, what happened? What went wrong? What broke?
another possible sign something was wrong. In the weeks leading up to the tragedy, the couple had been to the shooting range. His wife seemed to be really interested in guns, but he says he doesn't know where she got the one used to allegedly kill her co-workers.
During her trial, Bishop's defense argued she suffered from mental illness, citing paranoid tendencies and delusions. But prosecutors painted a different picture, one of a calculated killer who refused to accept rejection. They detailed how she had planned the attack, carrying the gun into the meeting and shooting her colleagues execution style.
That way it was clear to everybody that it was uncontested. It's part of the procedure on a guilty plea that you have to have a trial.
Amy Bishop Anderson's capital murder trial only lasted one day. She described the terror she felt on February 12, 2010. She says that Bishop looked determined when she pointed her 9mm gun at her and pulled the trigger.
In court, survivors gave harrowing testimonies, recounting the moments when they thought they wouldn't make it out alive. One witness described Bishop's face as emotionless as she opened fire.
Life in prison without parole was a deal that saved a former UA Huntsville professor from the death penalty. But now Amy Bishop Anderson wants a new trial and her conviction thrown out.
And we begin this noontime with some breaking news. Amy Bishop, the woman accused of killing 3 colleagues during a shooting rampage at the University of Alabama, has just pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity.
Amy Bishop pleaded not guilty to capital murder to avoid the death penalty due to reasons of insanity. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During sentencing, Bishop showed no visible emotion, sitting silently as the weight of her actions was laid bare. The families of her victims described the pain of losing their loved ones, calling Bishop's actions unforgivable. Her lack of remorse was a stark contrast to the devastation she caused.
Pictures of the victims and the crime scene were shown during the trial. Bishop put her head down as the graphic photos of her actions were shown. Gray says after the shots were fired, Bishop headed to the second floor, cleaned the gun that was used during the shooting, and threw that and the blood-stained jacket she was wearing in the trash.
In the courtroom, the survivors and victims' families were overwhelmed with grief, their emotions evident as they shared memories of the vibrant lives that were stolen. The atmosphere was heavy with pain and loss. Meanwhile, Bishop's lack of reaction unnerved those in attendance. She sat in silence, showing no remorse or emotion, a chilling reminder of the cold and calculated nature of her crime. Amy Bishop's deadly ambition left lives in ruin, but Darlie Routier's unthinkable crime shocked the nation. A mother's chilling courtroom reaction will leave you questioning everything.
911, what is your emergency? Ma'am? They just stabbed me and my children. What? They just stabbed me and my children.
In the early hours of June 6, 1996, the quiet suburban neighborhood of Rowlett, Texas was rocked by a frantic 911 call. A mother, her voice panicked and trembling, cried for help, claiming her home had been invaded. When first responders arrived, they found a horrifying scene that would grip the nation for decades. Two young boys, Devin, 6, and Damon, 5, had been stabbed to death, and their mother, Darlie Routier, was injured and covered in blood.
She said that she had fought off the attack. The only description of the attacker was a white male wearing dark clothing.
But as investigators pieced together the events of that night, unsettling questions began to emerge. Was Darlie the victim of a brutal home invasion, or was the real danger much closer to home?
Police spent much of the day meticulously investigating the crime scene.
The crime scene painted a chaotic picture. Blood stained the walls, a shattered wine glass lay on the floor, and a knife was discarded in the kitchen. Darlie, with a deep slash across her neck and wounds on her arms, claimed she had fought off an intruder who attacked her family. She said she woke to find a man standing over her before he fled into the night. However, investigators grew suspicious as they examined the scene. The wounds on Darlie, while serious, appeared less life-threatening than those inflicted on her sons. Evidence in the home didn't seem to match her account. The kitchen knife, identified as the murder weapon, was found to have fibers from a cut window screen, suggesting it had been staged. Adding to the doubts were Darlie's actions in the days following the murders. Just 8 days after her sons' deaths, she was filmed at their gravesite celebrating Devin's birthday. She was seen laughing, spraying silly string, and singing, a moment prosecutors would later use to argue that she lacked genuine grief.
And I recall how shocked I was at the sight of that, and I wasn't the only one who was shocked.
I was really taken aback by her demeanor. I tell you, as a parent, I found it disgusting.
As the case went to trial, prosecutors painted a chilling picture of a mother who had snapped. They argued that Darlie, overwhelmed by financial stress and the challenges of raising 3 children, killed her 2 oldest sons in a fit of rage, staging the crime scene to appear as a home invasion.
Investigators from the Rowlett Police Department arrested Darlie Routier. We believe that the white male suspect, described by Darlie Routier as the man that attacked her and murdered her children, never existed.
The only inference we could draw was she was setting up why you're not going to find an intruder's fingerprints on there.
When she said, "Don't touch anything," it clicked in my head, you know. Oh my gosh, I've just touched a piece of evidence.
Key evidence sealed her fate. The kitchen knife was linked to the window screen fibers, and forensic analysis suggested the blood spatter didn't align with her account of events. Investigators also noted the absence of signs of struggle or forced entry, casting further doubt on Darlie's story. In court, Darlie maintained her innocence, but the prosecution countered with the infamous silly string video, claiming it showcased her cold and detached demeanor. Her defense team argued that she was grieving in her own way, but the jury wasn't convinced.
We also believe that the wounds present on Darlie Routier were self-inflicted.
I swear I did not murder my children, I swear.
After a dramatic trial, Darlie Routier was convicted of the murder of Damon and sentenced to death. The decision sent shockwaves across the nation. While some hailed the verdict as justice for 2 innocent boys, others questioned whether the case had been mishandled. Darlie remains on death row, stubbornly maintaining her innocence. Advocates for Darlie have pushed for DNA testing on evidence from the crime scene, believing it could exonerate her. To this day, the case is mired in controversy, with supporters and detractors fiercely divided over her guilt.
So everyone came rushing back to the courtroom. The verdict was guilty.
Darlie, do you have any comments? Is there anything you would like to say? I didn't murder my children.
You're telling me that a person who is normal, not violent, no mental illness, could cold-bloodedly kill her own children for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
Darlie has maintained from the beginning that her husband had nothing to do with the deaths of these 2 boys.
The courtroom was filled with raw emotion as the verdict was read. Darlie's family wept openly, while others sat in stunned silence. The prosecutor stood firm, confident in their case, while the defense vowed to continue fighting for Darlie's freedom. Darlie, however, showed little reaction as her fate was sealed. She appeared calm but defiant, declaring that the truth would eventually come to light. For the families of Devin and Damon, no verdict could ever undo the tragedy of that night, leaving a community forever haunted by the question, did the justice system get it right? Next, we turn to the case of Angelina Rodriguez, a shocking story that left many in disbelief. What started as a tragic event soon unraveled into a chilling tale of manipulation and heartless actions.
I didn't poison my husband. I mean, I am willing to take a lie detector test. I did not poison my husband.
On the 9th of September 2000, police turned up at the residence of Frank and Angelina Rodriguez due to an emergency call. 32-year-old Angelina, who received them, then led them to the couple's bedroom, where Frank's lifeless body lay on the floor, in a pool of his blood. What the investigation into the incident revealed was the perpetration of a quite horrific set of actions. Jose Francisco Rodriguez had first met his wife Angelina in February 2000 following his first divorce, and very quickly came to call her his soulmate. By April 2000, they were married, with Angelina's 9-year-old daughter, Autumn, joining the family, as part of what was her mother's 4th marriage. His new wife, having 3 previous failed marriages, wasn't enough to set any alarm bells ringing for Frank, and his marriage, which he thought would be the beginning of a beautiful life ahead, would end up leading to his horrific death. Only a few months after getting married, Frank found himself hospitalized, and after he was discharged, he thought his wife Angelina was nursing him back to health. However, it appeared that she had been slowly poisoning him with oleander leaf extract, and then choosing to treat him with Gatorade infused with antifreeze. In between those actions, she had also at least once loosened the natural gas valves in the garage and left to visit a friend. It was obvious that Angelina was repeatedly trying to kill her husband, and he would eventually succumb to the antifreeze-infused Gatorade. The suspected reason behind her actions was that she had taken a sum of $250,000 out of her husband's life insurance only weeks before his death. When the police arrived at the scene of the crime, they were surprised at Angelina's rather calm demeanor after losing her husband. She also contacted the insurance company to inquire about the money only a few minutes after the coroner's investigators left the residence. However, despite the investigators' suspicions, there was no way to immediately conclude that Angelina had a hand in the murder. It would be Angelina herself who would expose herself during interrogations after she mentioned the potential usage of oleander and antifreeze as poisoning agents to authorities.
And the only person that supplied any information that Frank was poisoned was you. No one else knew that Frank was poisoned. Only you.
Despite trying to blame one of Frank's co-workers, there was no doubt in the investigators' minds that Angelina was the main suspect. And in February 2001, she was arrested while hatching another plan to trap their landlord in a legal case for asbestos poisoning. Angelina was convicted of Frank's murder in October 2003. And during her trial, she was also implicated with the murder of her 13-month-old daughter back in 1993, with allegations that she also committed the murder for financial gains. She would, however, deny these allegations.
I broke and made a few terrible, stupid mistakes, which I regret very much. We all make mistakes. I just picked the wrong time to make mine. But murder is not on that list.
Despite denying any wrongdoing in Frank's death, the court sentenced Angelina to death on the 12th of January 2004. The complete absence of any remorse in Angelina's reaction throughout her trial left the court so shocked that the judge stated to the court that he hadn't seen a heart colder than hers for 20 years.
On January 12, 2004, Angelina was convicted and sentenced. She was sentenced to death, not only for the murder of Frank, but also for the calculated way in which she had orchestrated his demise for financial gain.
In November 2010, the California Supreme Court unanimously upheld Angelina's conviction and death sentence. But in November 2024, Angelina, now 56, was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, based on Angelina's claim of ineffective assistance from her attorney. She remains behind bars at Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla. Angelina Rodriguez's calculated crime showcased a chilling level of manipulation, but the next case delves into an even darker scheme. Brenda Delgado, a woman who orchestrated a shocking murder fueled by jealousy and revenge.
Passion in Dallas. Brenda Delgado, the mastermind in the murder-for-hire plot targeting a Dallas dentist, today convicted of capital murder. Delgado hired a hitman to kill her ex-boyfriend's new love interest, Dr. Kendra Hatcher, in an uptown parking garage.
On the evening of September 2nd, 2015, 35-year-old Kendra Hatcher was shot dead in her parking garage by a suspected robber who fled the scene in a black Cherokee Jeep. The incident was heard by an eyewitness who contacted 911, and the revelations from the case shocked everyone. Hatcher had been dating dermatologist Ricky Paniagua for a few months, and the couple had intentions to get married. However, she was unaware of the obsessive nature of Paniagua's ex, 36-year-old Brenda Delgado, who had been stalking the couple following her own breakup with Ricky a few months earlier. Delgado had been in a nearly 3-year relationship with Paniagua before they split in February 2015, but the pair had remained in platonic contact. However, while Paniagua only had honest intentions, Delgado had been plotting something sinister. An autopsy of Hatcher's murder quickly revealed that her death wasn't a robbery situation gone wrong, but an actual murder attempt. This meant that the list of suspects was quickly narrowed down to one: Brenda Delgado. Delgado had apparently recruited 2 individuals: a 31-year-old local substance dealer named Christopher Love, who was responsible for the shooting, and 23-year-old Crystal Cortez, a single mother who drove the getaway vehicle and bribed them with cash. Delgado had borrowed the getaway vehicle from a friend, Jose Luis Ortiz, who she happened to be with on the evening of Hatcher's murder. After spotting his Jeep on the news, Ortiz contacted investigators to inform them that he loaned it to Delgado, but that she had been with him on the night of the murder.
I gave her a comment like, hey, have you heard about that dentist that got shot in Uptown Dallas? She would say no. She'd say, well, how funny, because I mean it looks very similar to mine. I'm over here lending you my car.
When invited for initial questioning, Delgado told the investigators that she had lent the car to Cortez, subsequently resulting in the arrest of Love and Cortez, who both chose to testify against her.
I got $500.
And who paid you?
Brenda did.
Sensing ominous consequences after the apprehension of her hitman, Delgado fled to her native Mexico in hopes to escape justice. However, after being named in the FBI's top 10 list of most wanted female fugitives, with a $100,000 bounty on her head, she accepted extradition to the United States on the basis that she doesn't face the death penalty. After her extradition, Delgado faced trial for her evil actions on the 7th of June 2019, and it didn't take long for the jurors to convict her on charges of capital murder. She was eventually sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
You can't even look at me!
Delgado refused to lift her eyes, but was forced to listen as Dr. Hatcher's sister confronted her from the witness stand.
During Delgado's trial, Jennifer Escobar, a former friend and roommate of hers, revealed that she had been obsessed with Paniagua and had long since had plans to execute Hatcher, and possibly even Paniagua himself.
Let's get rid of Kendra Hatcher.
And why did she want to get rid of Kendra Hatcher?
Because she was envious of her.
During her sentencing, Delgado maintained a cold, emotionless look as she was consigned to her fate behind bars.
Jury unanimously find the defendant guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment. Thank you, ma'am.
During the victim impact statements, Hatcher's mother, Bonnie Jameson, told Delgado that she had earned her spot behind the cold steel bars for the rest of her life, adding the damning statement, "If justice could have handed you a death sentence, make no mistake, I would have been there front and center."
Have earned your spot on this earth behind cold steel bars for the rest of your miserable, pathetic life.
Today, Delgado is locked up at the maximum security William P. Hobby Unit for Women in unincorporated Falls County, Texas, where she is expected to remain for the rest of her life. As for her murder accomplices, Love is currently on death row for executing the murder, while Cortez was offered a 35-year sentence in exchange for testifying against the other 2. Next, we explore the case of Beverly Mallum, whose brutal actions left a community reeling. Her story is one of shocking betrayal and unimaginable cruelty.
40 to 60 years with 1,500 days credit. You owe 130 crime victim assessment, court costs of $500, $60 for DNA testing.
In 2002, a murder that soon got dubbed the Jack-in-the-Box murder remained unsolved for many years. On May 2, 2002, a blueberry farmer was driving on his land when he noticed burnt trees. When he got closer, he found an open footlocker. To his horror, the burnt remains of a man had been crumpled into the footlocker. Soon the police arrived and they gathered as much evidence as they could. Despite all their efforts, the body was not identified and the case became a cold one for years. It was not until 2015 that the body was finally identified as 37-year-old Roberto Caraballo. The last known family of Roberto Caraballo was Beverly Mallum, Deneen Ducharme, Beverly's first daughter, and Cicely Caraballo. Beverly and Roberto had been married and Cicely was their daughter. As expected, these people were called in for questioning. It was revealed that Ducharme had been the one to give information to the police about the body. Eventually, she said that her mother and another man, Christopher McMillan, had joined her in killing Roberto. During interrogation, McMillan said that Beverly had pushed her husband down the basement steps and beat him with a hammer until it became lodged in his skull. He said that while Roberto was still breathing, Beverly wrapped a plastic bag around his head. According to McMillan and Beverly's daughter, she had planned the killing because she wanted to have a test run at being a serial killer. Ducharme and McMillan confessed to playing roles in the murder and mutilation of Roberto's body. Ducharme was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Christopher McMillan was sentenced to 15 to 40 years in prison. Beverly evaded authorities for 5 years after Roberto's body was identified. She was eventually arrested in Italy in 2020. Beverly was extracted to the U.S. and her trial began. Beverly was described as someone dangerous to anyone who got in her way. Prosecutors also argued based on the testimony of her daughter that Beverly had killed Roberto because he was cramping her lifestyle. She was charged with second-degree murder and mutilation of a body. In court, she seemed very disinterested and showed no remorse for her actions. Even though the testimonies of the other two convicts correlated, McCallum said that it was her daughter who had killed her husband. Nobody believed her. Roberto's daughter, who is now 31 years old, gave her impact statement and asked the judge to impose the maximum sentence.
Justice must be served, not only for my father, but for those who have forever been changed by her ruthless actions. I formally request restitution and intend to utilize all proceeds to help support children of murdered parents.
Despite everything that her daughter said, Beverly McCallum remained stone-faced, bored, and at some point, she even dozed off when her attorney was giving closing arguments. She maintained the same demeanor when the jury gave their verdict. The judge then expressed how she could not understand how someone could show no remorse. Ultimately, Beverly was sentenced to 40 to 60 years in prison. Beverly McCallum's brutal betrayal was shocking, but the next case dives into a twisted web of lies and deceit. Meet Sabrina Lan, whose deadly plot to eliminate her husband for a new life spiraled out of control.
As to count 2, a violation of Penal Code Section 182A with the PC 187A.
In 2008, a couple living in California decided to spice things up a little bit by opening their marriage up to other couples. This couple was Robert and Sabrina Lan. By 2014, Sabrina had grown tired of the lifestyle and wanted them to go back to church and find their faith. However, Robert refused, saying he liked the lifestyle. Even though they opened their relationship to other people, some lines were still not meant to be crossed, like having an affair behind the other person's back. However, this was exactly what Sabrina did. She met Jonathan Hearn, who was a firefighter and a Christian. They bonded over this and soon started seeing each other. Soon after, Robert discovered that the two of them had been sharing intimate texts on Sabrina's phone. Robert confronted her and said that she should end the relationship. Sabrina refused and kept on seeing Hearn. On August 14, 2014, Robert was shot and killed while he was working at the BNSF rail yard. The crime scene was made to look like a botched robbery, but they suspected foul play. CCTV footage showed an unknown man limping from the rail yard around the time of the murder. Police could not identify who this man was until 2 weeks after Robert's death. A friend of Sabrina and Robert called the police and told them that he got a strange voicemail from Hearn, who said he was sorry about Rob's death. Because of this, police decided to wiretap Sabrina and Hearn's phones. One of the conversations was them praying and asking God for forgiveness. Even though many things they said in the recordings were intriguing, they said nothing about the murder. But when police decided to give Sabrina false information about the murder investigation to see what she would do, she called Hearn on a burner phone immediately. Sabrina and Hearn were arrested 2 months later on suspicion of killing Robert. In Hearn's house, they found a motorcycle, a helmet, a red bandana, and a backpack. These items matched the description of the unknown man from the footage.
She expressed a number of reasons why divorce was not a very appealing option for her, and that was part of what solidified some of our conversations about his eventual demise.
Hearn took a plea deal and confessed to killing Robert. He also testified that Sabrina helped him kill her husband because she felt it was a better idea than to divorce him. Hearn also said that there had been a first plan to kill Robert before they resorted to shooting. He claimed that Sabrina had attempted to poison Robert's banana pudding with arsenic. Sabrina denied knowing anything about it, however. Despite this, she was charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, solicitation for murder, and conspiracy.
As to count 2, a violation of Penal Code Section 182A with the PC 187A, probation will be denied and the defendant will be sent to the Department of Corrections for the term prescribed by law of 25 years to life.
Ultimately, she was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. In court, she was not shown on camera, but reporters said that she remained calm and expressionless till she was led away. Unlike Sabrina Lan, who killed her husband so she could be with another man, Galen Morris killed her boyfriend because he was with another woman.
If I could turn back the hands of time, I would, and it would be handled differently, so differently. I'm praying for their strength.
Hell Hath No Fury Like a Woman Scorned was written for Galen Morris. On June 3, 2022, Galen had gotten into a fight with her 26-year-old boyfriend, Andre Smith. She had noticed that he had been staying out more often, possibly with another woman. Smith and Galen were living together in a house that Galen paid all the bills for. During the argument, Galen told Smith to pack his things and leave. In frustration, Galen needed to know where Smith had been going, so she put an AirTag in the back seat of his car.
He confronted him and got into a fight with the woman he was with before they were all told to leave.
She tracked him to a bar later that day and saw him with another woman. This made her angry, and she got into a fight with the woman. She swung a beer bottle at her but was blocked by Smith. This brawl caused the three of them to get thrown out of the bar. When Galen got outside, she entered her car and sped up to Smith, where he was standing on the sidewalk. She initially eased up and backed off before she suddenly sped up and hit Smith on the left hip with the mirror of the car. This was when things got worse. Galen hit Smith with the car again and dragged him out of the vehicle before running over his body repeatedly. Smith's upper body was under the car and his head was driven over. Smith died of traumatic asphyxia. According to a witness who was at the parking lot, Galen had hit the gas and then she heard what felt like a speed bump and crunching. When the police arrived, Galen was arrested. She did not attempt to run away because she was in shock and didn't know what happened. At first, she was charged with murder. After investigation, her charges were lessened to voluntary manslaughter because she acted under sudden heat. Galen said that she didn't mean to kill him. She confessed that she meant to hit him, but killing him wasn't in her plans. During the trial, Smith's mother asked that she serve the maximum sentence for voluntary manslaughter, which was 30 years. The jury then gave their verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of voluntary manslaughter, a level 2 felony.
Because it was proven that Galen didn't plan to kill her boyfriend, she was convicted of voluntary manslaughter. She was found not guilty of murder, and she was eventually sentenced. During her sentencing, Smith's mother was angry that Galen was only convicted of voluntary manslaughter.
My son did not deserve to be murdered because of her seeing him with another woman, because she's been seeing him with other women. This has been going on. He was not married to her. He didn't owe her nothing. He don't share a kid with her or anything.
In court, Galen was teary as she apologized to the victim's family. She said that it wasn't her intention and that she was sorry. Ultimately, she was sentenced to 18 years in prison. As she was being led out of the courtroom, Galen continued to cry. The chilling reactions of these brutal female killers show just how far some will go when facing the consequences of their actions. But the journey doesn't end here. There are even more shocking cases that will leave you stunned. The next video on screen will take you deeper into the minds of killers who left the world in disbelief. You won't want to miss what happens next.